In this video, I'm going to tell you my opinion about what the most difficult part of the medical school application cycle is. And then I'm also going to tell you how I responded to it and maybe give you some advice on if you're in a similar spot to me and you're applying right now, you're hearing back. Because I've been getting some rejections lately and I've done some interviews. I'm kind of in the thick of the application cycle right now where hopefully I'll be hearing back soon from a bunch of places. I haven't heard back from like 20 schools and I've gotten rejected from one of the schools I interviewed at. That was my state school, OHSU, because I went to college in Oregon and I'm a resident of Oregon, which was kind of disheartening, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But first, I want to just talk about what that is, the most difficult part, and I think it's the lack of control that you feel like you have once you submit everything. And even in the process of writing the essays, because writing essays is not like taking tests. And as a pre med, a lot of what you do is take tests. A lot of what you do is learn the correct answer to a question. And if you're like me, it's much more difficult when you take a class that's based on essays where you don't really know, there's not really a correct answer. It's more about the writing style, and it's very subjective and dependent on the teacher. It's ambiguous at times. And I think the nature of the application process, where it's based on asking questions in interviews and writing essays, it's much more subjective. And it feels like there's a lot less control in that sense. All you can do is portray your motivations as authentically as you can, talk about your experiences, and while you can get those experiences before you start the application process, there's a sense of control. Like, yes, I'm setting myself up well, I'm doing these activities, I'm learning about what healthcare is like and making sure I'm interested in it. I'm doing all these things. I have control. And then you let go once you hit the submit button, once you do the interview, and you're just sort of waiting. So that's the hardest part, in my opinion, is the loss of control. And it actually kind of reminds me of when I was taking existentialism, the class. It was a class offered at my college, the University of Oregon. And I remember my teacher, well, first of all, I didn't really agree with a lot of the things she was teaching in the class, because the way the class was structured, of course, there's the texts that everyone reads, but then, some of it's up for interpretation and people can agree or disagree with what the author is saying. And I sort of felt like there was a deep problem because I was in disagreement with her about a lot of stuff and I wrote about it in my first essay. And then I didn't get a good grade on it. And I talked to her about it. And she didn't really offer a lot of specific criticism of my writing style, my grammar, my even my argumentation and logic. So I was a little bit like, I don't understand what's going on here. I wanted something concrete, something actionable. I wanted to have control over the outcome of my success in the class. But ultimately, I couldn't really achieve that. All I could do was try to be authentic, and I did make some changes. She was pretty vague, but she did offer me some constructive feedback, and I was able to do decently well in the class. I ended up getting an A minus, and she didn't even grade my last essay, which I was a little bit frustrated by, especially after I'd gone into all of her office hours and kept talking to her about everything. But I feel like it's sort of similar when you're applying to medical school. Some of them aren't even going to respond to you. I know that there's like silent rejections, kind of like the last essay that never got graded. But, more broadly speaking, there's nothing you can do once you hit submit. So now I'll talk a little bit about how I'm sort of handling that. And my thought process is this: it's like, it's not really the end of the world if you don't get accepted the first time you apply. It's it's going to change the course of your next year or more as you probably reapply, probably pursue different extracurriculars or whatever. But I don't think it should stop you from pursuing your goals. And I think it's unhealthy to keep grasping on for control in this part of the application cycle. As rejections come in, I try not to let it impact me in an emotional way. Maybe intellectually I'll recalibrate in terms of what my plans are. And, you know, for example, like after getting rejected from OHSU, it doesn't really make sense to keep paying rent in Oregon and, being a resident here. As much as I love the state, it's very difficult to support myself completely financially on a EMT salary at like an entry level thing if I'm not going to join the fire department or become a firefighter or a paramedic and actually pursue it as a career path. So I'm probably going to end up moving home and, you know, hopefully maybe do some work there as an EMT or do some clinical stuff. Find similar volunteer work to what I did in Oregon. But that's the type of thing that I think is reasonable. You get a rejection and you take action based on it, and you don't let it impact you too directly in terms of like, oh, I'm not good enough, whatever. I think that's really unhealthy to think about the rejections as a reflection of you know, because it's subjective at the end of the day. The medical schools are looking for different things based on what they need, the type of student body they're trying to build, whatever that looks like, whatever. I've said in previous videos, I don't know what the admission committees are thinking, but I don't think it's good to take it as a reflection of you and the value you can bring to patients someday. It's much better to just take actions in a way that's going to set you up best for the future and if you do need to reapply. Now, that being said, I'm still hopeful for this cycle. There's some schools, a lot of schools I haven't heard back from, including 2 that I interviewed at, and I'll be grateful to get in anywhere. I know a lot of people are really dead set on a school. I think that's also, it's not really healthy because you're grasping for control. You want to have control over where you go, over the specific school. I think part of being a doctor is recognizing you don't always have control over the situation. So, you're in a hospital, you're doing an intervention. All you can do is what you're trained to do as best as you can. And the outcome isn't guaranteed. All that's guaranteed is what you do, you know. This is something I've talked about in the past. More broadly speaking, it's like it's better to set goals that are action based rather than outcome based. It's like I'm going to do these things, and then the outcome becomes a little out of your control. You increase the probability of the outcome, but at the end of the day, all you can really do is change your actions. So don't let the outcome completely discourage you. All you can do is increase your likelihood of an outcome happening. And, if that means reapplying, then it is what it is. And I would recommend, as a response to the most difficult part of the application cycle, to let go a little bit, to stop grasping for control. That's my main advice. If you want to follow me on my journey to becoming a doctor and on my travels, I'm going to do a little traveling here. I'm going to be doing lots of interviews hopefully in the future. I want to interview doctors from different specialties, talk about policy, other things as I become more knowledgeable. So if you want to follow me on that journey, click the buttons below, support the channel. Hopefully soon here, if I get up to 500 subscribers, I'm going to start live streaming on Fridays. I think I'm going to get rid of the Science in the News series. It hasn't been that popular, and it's kind of a lot of effort compared to these types of videos. So I'm just going to do live streams on Fridays where people can ask questions, I can give guidance, and I'll have a structured thing at the beginning. It's going to be all structured about advice for people applying to medical school. Extracurricular activities, maybe like scheduling your classes, these sorts of things, maybe interviewing people. And then you can ask questions for free, and I'll answer them because it's a small channel, and as it grows, maybe I'll implement other things like channel memberships or something. But stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to this little ramble at the end of the video.